My son called me a burden at Thanksgiving. Not after dinner. Not in private. Not in a moment of anger when no one else could hear. He said it while I was standing beside the dining table, holding the pumpkin pie I had baked from scratch that morning. The table was full. Turkey, stuffing, green bean casserole, sweet potatoes with marshmallows, cranberry sauce in the glass bowl my late husband bought me 40 years ago. Everything looked warm. Everything smelled like home. And then my son looked at me and said, "Mom, you've become a burden." The room went quiet. Not shocked quiet. Worse, prepared quiet. Like everyone else had been waiting for him to finally say it. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, did not look surprised. She sat at the far end of the table in her cream sweater, her blonde hair smooth, her gold bracelet catching the candlelight. She lowered her eyes to her wine glass, but I saw the corner of her mouth move. Not a smile. Almost. My son, Mark, sat beside her. 48 years old. A man with a beautiful house, a wife, 2 children, and the kind of confidence that made strangers think he had built everything himself. But I knew better. I had known him when he was afraid of thunder. I had known him when he cried because he failed his driving test. I had known him when he called me at 2 in the morning from college because he didn't know how to handle being lonely. And now he was looking at me like I was an old piece of furniture he no longer had room for. I kept both hands on the pie dish. If I let go, I wasn't sure they would stay steady. A burden? I asked. My voice sounded calm. That surprised me. Mark exhaled, irritated. "Mom, don't make that face. You know what I mean." No, I did not know. Not the way he meant it. I knew I was 72. I knew my knees hurt when it rained. I knew I sometimes asked him to drive me to appointments after my cataract surgery. I knew I had lived in the in-law suite over his garage for almost 2 years since my husband died. But I also knew something else. I knew I had paid the down payment on this house. I knew I had covered the property taxes. When Mark's business nearly collapsed, I knew I had signed papers he never bothered to read. And I knew he had no idea what those papers really meant. Vanessa finally spoke. "Eleanor, no one is trying to hurt you." That was when I knew she was lying. People only say that when they already have. Mark pushed back his chair. "We've been talking, and it's time for a change." "We?" I asked. He glanced at Vanessa. "Of course. We think you should find somewhere more appropriate," he said. "A senior apartment. Assisted living maybe. Somewhere you won't be so dependent." Dependent? I looked around the table. My grandson Tyler stared at his plate. My granddaughter Sophie looked like she wanted to cry. No one moved. No one defended me. I set the pie down carefully. "On Thanksgiving," I said softly. Mark rubbed his forehead. "Mom, please don't make this dramatic." Vanessa stood. "We already packed a bag for you." That was when the room tilted. She walked to the hallway and returned with my small blue suitcase. The one I used for church retreats. It was full. My things. Packed by her hands. Without asking. Mark would not look at me. Vanessa placed the suitcase beside my chair. "You can stay at the Pinecrest Inn tonight," she said. "We'll talk tomorrow when everyone is calmer." Everyone. I stared at my son. "Are you asking me to leave?" He swallowed, then said the word that ended something between us. "Yes." I picked up my coat. No tears. No pleading. I walked to the front door. Behind me, Vanessa whispered, "This is for the best." Then the door closed, and I heard the lock turn. On Thanksgiving night, in the house my son thought was his. Cold air hit my face first. Then the silence. Inside, there had been voices, plates, children, candles, the smell of turkey and cinnamon. Outside, there was only darkness. The porch light glowed above me. A decorative wreath hung on the front door. Vanessa had tied it with a burgundy ribbon that morning. "Give thanks." That was what the little wooden sign in the middle said. I stared at those words until they blurred. Not because I was crying. Because my eyes could not understand the cruelty of it. "Give thanks. Then lock your mother outside." I stood there with my coat over one arm and a suitcase at my feet. No purse. No medication. No phone charger. Just the overnight bag Vanessa had packed, as if sending away an old woman was no different from sending clothes to donation. For a moment, I thought Mark would open the door. I told myself he would come out. He would say he was sorry. He would say Vanessa had pushed too hard. He would say Thanksgiving had gotten emotional. I waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2. Nothing. Only the muffled sound of dinner continuing inside. That hurt more than the lock. They kept eating. After removing me, they kept eating. I picked up the suitcase. The handle felt cold. My car was parked on the curb. Vanessa had asked me not to block the driveway because the kids might want to play basketball later. I walked slowly down the steps. My knees ached. The night air smelled like wet leaves and chimney smoke. Across the street, a family laughed as they carried leftovers to their car. A father held a foil-covered tray. A little girl skipped beside him. Normal life. The kind of life that does not pause for someone else's humiliation. When I reached my car, I opened the back door and placed the suitcase inside. Then I leaned against the frame, breathing, slowly, carefully. That was when I remembered. My purse was still inside, on the side table near the kitchen. My wallet, my phone, my house keys, everything. I looked back at the house. Every window glowed. The big colonial Mark loved to show off. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, finished basement, stone fireplace, big backyard. He called it our forever home. But forever had been expensive, and when the bank hesitated, I had been the one who stepped forward. I had not thought of it as power. At the time, I thought of it as love. There is a difference. Love gives. Power remembers. I walked around to the side of the house. There was a small mudroom door near the garage. Years ago, after Mark lost his key twice in 1 month, I had hidden a spare in the ceramic planter beside the steps. Vanessa hated that planter, said it looked old-fashioned. She never knew why I kept it there. My fingers searched under the soiled tray. The key was still taped underneath. I almost laughed. Not from joy, from the strange mercy of forgotten things. I opened the mudroom door quietly. The house was warm. Too warm. The smell of Thanksgiving surrounded me like an insult. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. No one heard me. The mudroom led to the laundry area, then to the hallway near Mark's home office. My purse was not far, but something made me stop. The office door was slightly open. Light spilled across the floor. I heard Vanessa's voice. Low, sharp. She'll calm down. Once she realizes she has nowhere else to go, she'll agree. Then Mark. I don't know, Vanessa. She's old, Mark. She needs us. And this house needs to be ours without her hovering over everything. Ours. I stood in the hallway, perfectly still. Then Vanessa said the sentence that changed the night. We just need her to sign the transfer papers. Transfer papers. My hand tightened around the hidden key. So that was the plan. Not concern. Not care. Not family. Paperwork. I stepped back into the shadows. For the first time since dinner, the pain inside me cooled. Not disappeared. Cooled. Into something useful. I took my purse from the side table. Then I left the same way I came in. Quietly. Because now I knew one thing. They had locked out the wrong woman. I did not go to the Pinecrest Inn. I drove past it. The sign glowed blue beside the highway. Vacancy. Vanessa had probably checked. That thought made my stomach turn. Not because she was organized. Because she had been prepared. You do not pack someone's suitcase, choose a motel, and mention transfer papers unless the decision was made long before Thanksgiving dinner. I drove to a small diner off Route 9. It was open 24 hours. The kind of place with vinyl booths, weak coffee, and waitresses who call every woman over 60 hon. I sat in the back. My coat still on. My purse in my lap. A waitress brought coffee. I wrapped both hands around the cup. They were cold, but steady. That surprised me again. I thought I would fall apart. Instead, I found myself remembering. Memory can be cruel that way. It waits until you are quiet. Then it opens every drawer. I remembered Mark. At 6 years old, standing in our old kitchen with cranberry sauce on his shirt, proudly helping me stir gravy. I remembered him at 17, slamming doors and telling me I didn't understand anything. I remembered him at 29, newly married to Vanessa, asking his father and me for help with just a temporary cash flow problem. Temporary. That word had lasted years. My husband, Paul, had wanted to say no more often. Not because he didn't love Mark. Because he did. Love him enough to let him stand, Paul used to say. But I had always softened. One check. One loan. One just this once. After Paul died, Mark changed. Or maybe he simply stopped hiding behind his father's presence. Vanessa changed faster. At first, she brought casseroles, sent flowers, called me Mom Eleanor in that sweet voice of hers. Then slowly, little things shifted. My opinion became outdated. My furniture became clutter. My recipes became too heavy. My church friends became too much drama. Then came the suggestion that I sell my small ranch house and move into their in-law suite. You shouldn't be alone, Mark said. Think of the grandchildren, Vanessa added. So I sold my home. The home Paul and I had paid off after 32 years. I moved into the suite over their garage with 3 boxes of photographs and a promise that I would always have family close. But the money from that sale did not sit in my account for long. Mark's business needed bridge funding. The roof needed replacing. The mortgage needed restructuring. Vanessa said it was all temporary, and I believed them. Until tonight. I pulled my phone from my purse. There were messages already. Mark, Mom, where are you? Mark, don't make this worse. Vanessa, we need to talk like adults tomorrow. Adults. I stared at that word. Then I deleted the message. The waitress returned. You okay, hon? I looked up. For one dangerous second, kindness almost broke me. I'm fine, I said. She didn't believe me, but she nodded anyway. Outside, cars hissed along the wet road. Inside, a television above the counter played a football replay with the sound off. Thanksgiving. Families. Touchdowns. Leftovers. And me, 72 years old. Sitting in a diner with my life reduced to a suitcase and a secret key. But I still had one thing they didn't know about. The envelope. My attorney had given it to me after Paul died. Keep this somewhere safe, he said. I had not opened it in months. It was in the glove compartment of my car. I paid for the coffee, walked back outside, opened the car, and took out the envelope. Inside was a copy of the deed structure. I unfolded it under the dome light. My name appeared first. Eleanor Ruth Bennett. Not Mark. Not Vanessa. Me. Owner of record. The house Mark called his. The house Vanessa wanted free of me. The house they had locked me out of. It belonged to me. I slept in my car for 2 hours. Not because I had nowhere to go. Because I needed the quiet. The diner parking lot emptied slowly after midnight. Rain tapped against the windshield. Not hard. Just steady. Enough to make the world feel distant. I reclined the seat slightly, wrapped my coat around myself, and held the deed copy against my chest like it could keep me warm. It did not. But the truth did. By morning, I understood the shape of what had happened. Thanksgiving dinner had not been a family argument. It had been pressure. Public pressure. A room full of witnesses, some too young, some too weak, some too uncomfortable to intervene. They wanted me embarrassed, off balance, grateful for any offer, then locked out, then frightened, then ready to sign whatever came next. That was the part Vanessa miscalculated. Fear had visited me many times before. I had buried a husband, sold my home, started over at 70, sat through hospital rooms, bank meetings, and nights when grief made the walls feel too close. Fear did not impress me anymore. At 6:30, I drove to the storage unit across town. After moving into Mark's house, I had kept one small unit for things Vanessa called unnecessary. Paul's old tools, photo albums, my cedar chest, boxes of documents. She thought it was sentimental clutter. It was history, and history has receipts. The storage facility gate creaked open. The morning air was cold and gray. I unlocked Unit 47 and stepped inside. Dust, cardboard, old wood, my life stacked and labeled. Boxes. I found the cedar chest near the back. Inside were Paul's military papers, our marriage certificate, the title to my old car, and a thick folder marked Bennett family property. Paul had labeled it himself. His handwriting was square and careful. I sat on an overturned box and opened it. There it all was. The agreement. The title transfer. The mortgage restructuring. The private family loan. The trust addendum. The house had been purchased in Mark and Vanessa's names originally. But after Mark's business nearly failed, the bank demanded additional collateral. Paul and I stepped in. Then Paul insisted on protection. If we rescue the house, he said, we don't become guests in it. I remembered that now. At the time, Mark had been grateful. Vanessa had been quiet. Too quiet. The final arrangement was clear. Paul and I had paid off the primary mortgage balance using proceeds from investments and later from the sale of my ranch house. The property had been transferred into the Bennett Family Housing Trust. After Paul's death, I became sole trustee and beneficial owner for life. Mark and Vanessa held occupancy rights. Not ownership. Occupancy rights. Conditional. I read that word again. Conditional. They could live there as long as I permitted it. As long as they maintained the property. As long as they did not attempt to displace or exploit me. I laughed then. A small, breathless laugh. Not because it was funny. Because Paul had seen further than I had. He knew love could make me soft. So he built me something hard. A legal wall. With my name on it. My phone rang. Mark again. I let it ring. Then Vanessa. I let that ring too. A text came through. Vanessa, We have papers ready. This doesn't need to be ugly. I looked around the storage unit. At the boxes she thought were useless. At the folders she never bothered to ask about. Then I typed one reply. Make sure your papers are accurate. I pressed send. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. No message came. Good. For the first time, Vanessa was thinking. I placed the documents neatly back in the folder. Then stopped. No. Not back. Not hidden. I put them in my purse. They were coming with me. By 8 o'clock, I was driving downtown. Not to Mark. Not to Vanessa. To the one person Paul had told me to call if family ever forgot what love meant. Our attorney. And this time, I was ready to remember what ownership meant. Samuel Price had been our attorney for 26 years. He had written our wills, handled the sale of my ranch house, drawn up the trust, sent flowers when Paul died. He was old-fashioned in the best way. Return calls. Read every page. Never used 10 words when 4 would do. His office opened at 9. I was waiting outside at 8:50. He saw me through the glass door and unlocked it himself. Eleanor, he said. One word. But something in his face told me he already knew this was not a social visit. I need to understand my house, I said. He stepped aside. Then come in. We sat in his conference room. No coffee. No small talk. I placed the documents on the table. Then I told him everything. Thanksgiving dinner. Burden. Packed suitcase. Locked door. Transfer papers. Vanessa's saying I had nowhere else to go. Samuel did not interrupt. That is a gift. A good attorney knows silence can collect evidence. When I finished, he removed his glasses and set them on the table. I'm sorry, he said. I nodded. Then he opened the folder. For the next 40 minutes, Samuel explained the structure in plain English. The house was held by the Bennett Family Housing Trust. I was sole trustee. I held lifetime beneficial control. Mark and Vanessa had a limited occupancy license based on family use and trustee approval. They did not own the house. They could not sell it. They could not refinance it. They could not force me out. They could not transfer anything without my signature. And if they attempted coercion, displacement, or financial exploitation, their occupancy rights could be terminated after proper notice. Proper notice, I repeated. Samuel nodded. Legal steps matter. We do this correctly. That was what I needed. Not revenge with shouting. Reversal with paperwork. What about the transfer papers Vanessa mentioned? His mouth tightened. I would like to see them. So would I. He leaned back. Eleanor, did you sign anything? Recently? No, did Mark ask you to? Not yet. But they packed your bag and removed you from the property first. Yes. He wrote that down. Carefully. Good. The word surprised me. Good. Not morally, he said. Legally. I understood. Their cruelty had become evidence. What can I do? I asked. Samuel folded his hands. You can send formal notice reminding them of the ownership structure. You can revoke informal access to your private suite and office areas. You can require all communication about the property to go through counsel. You can demand return of your belongings. And if they continue pressuring you, you can begin termination of occupancy. Termination. The word sat between us. Heavy. Possible. I thought of Tyler and Sophie. My grandchildren. They had not done this. They had sat at that table, trapped inside adult cowardice. I don't want the children hurt, I said. Then we separate the children from the adults in the documents, Samuel replied. That was why I trusted him. He understood the difference between justice and damage. I don't want to throw them out today. You don't have to. But I want them to know I can. Samuel's eyes softened. That, Eleanor, is often enough. He drafted the notice while I sat there. My name appeared at the top. Not as mother. Not as grandmother. As trustee. Owner. Legal authority. When he printed the document, I read every line. Then I signed. My hand did not shake. Samuel placed the signed copies into an envelope. Do you want me to send this? I looked at the envelope. Then thought of the door locking behind me. No, I said. I'll deliver it. Samuel hesitated. Take someone with you. I am taking someone. Who? I picked up the envelope. The law. I returned to the house, just afternoon. The driveway was full. Mark's SUV. Vanessa's white Lexus. A dark sedan I didn't recognize. Probably the person with the transfer papers. Good. Let them all be there. I parked at the curb. The same place I had parked on Thanksgiving. But this time, I did not sit in the car wondering if I still belonged. I walked up the driveway with Samuel's envelope in my hand. The front door opened before I rang. Vanessa stood. There. Perfect makeup. Soft beige sweater. controlled face. Behind her, Mark appeared in the hallway. He looked relieved. That hurt. Not because he missed me. Because he thought I had come back to comply. Mom, he said. Thank God. Vanessa stepped aside. We were worried. No, I said. You were waiting. Her smile faded slightly. I entered the house. The house. My house. The Thanksgiving decorations were still up. A ceramic turkey on the console table. A pumpkin centerpiece near the stairs. Everything staged for gratitude. Nothing grateful in sight. A man in a navy suit stood in the living room holding a leather folder. He smiled too quickly. Mrs. Bennett, I'm Greg Wallace. I help families with estate transitions. Estate transitions. Vanessa had hired vocabulary. I looked at him. Are you an attorney? His smile weakened. I work with legal documents. That wasn't my question. Mark shifted. Mom, Greg is just here to help. I turned to my son. Help whom? Silence. That old familiar answer. Vanessa gestured toward the dining room. Let's sit. No one wants conflict. I almost admired her. After locking me out, she still spoke like conflict was something I had brought in on my shoes. We sat at the same table. The pie plate was gone. The table had been cleaned. The room looked innocent. It was not. Greg opened his folder. We have a simple document that would clarify ownership and reduce future confusion. I nodded. Clarify ownership. Yes. He slid papers toward me. I did not touch them. Vanessa leaned forward. It's just a formality, Eleanor. Mark needs clean title for financial planning. Clean title. That phrase told me everything. They had run into a wall. My name. My trust. My control. I placed Samuel's envelope on the table. Before I look at your papers, you should look at mine. No one moved. Then Mark reached for the envelope. Vanessa stopped him with a glance. Too late. He opened it. Read the first page. His face changed. Slowly. Then completely. What is this? He asked. A notice, I said. Greg leaned over. His professional smile vanished. Vanessa snatched the paper from Mark. Her eyes moved fast. Very fast. Then she looked up at me. You went to a lawyer? No, I said. I went to my lawyer. Mark read another page. Trustee, he said. His voice was small. I held his eyes. Yes. Vanessa's face tightened. This doesn't mean what you think it means. Greg cleared his throat. Actually nervous now. It may. That was the first honest thing he had said. I turned to Vanessa. You told me I had nowhere else to go. No answer. You locked me out. Still nothing. You packed my suitcase. Mark closed his eyes. I leaned forward slightly. And you did all of that in a house you do not own. The dining room fell silent. This time, the silence was mine. Greg left first. Not immediately, but soon enough. He read the notice twice, asked who represented me, took Samuel's card, and suddenly remembered another appointment. Vanessa walked him to the door with stiff shoulders. Mark stayed at the table. He had not looked up. The notice sat in front of him like a diagnosis. When Vanessa returned, her voice was lower, sharper. This is absurd. I looked at her. Which part? She held up the paper. This. All of it. You're using legal technicalities against your own son. Legal technicalities. People love calling the truth technical when it no longer favors them. I'm using ownership documents, I said. This is his home, she snapped. Mark finally looked up. Vanessa heard herself then. Too late. I turned to him. Is it? He swallowed. Mom, I thought. You thought what? He looked at the notice. I thought Dad helped with the financing. I didn't know it was transferred into a trust. You signed the occupancy agreement. His face went pale. I didn't read all of it. No surprise there. Vanessa stepped in. We were under pressure at the time. Yes, I said. And your father and I rescued you. Mark flinched. Good. Not because I wanted pain. Because truth should touch skin. I continued. We paid the mortgage balance. We covered the taxes. We let you stay here because you were our son, and because the children needed stability. Vanessa folded her arms. You lived here too. In the suite over the garage, I said. Where you began calling me inconvenient. I never said that. No. You preferred burden. Her mouth closed. Mark rubbed his eyes. Mom, I didn't mean it. That sentence. Small. Weak. Too late. You meant it yesterday. No, I was frustrated. You were honest. He looked at me then. Really looked. I saw the boy beneath the man. But I also saw the man who had let me stand in the cold. Both were true. That is what makes betrayal hard. It rarely comes from monsters. It comes from people you still remember loving. Vanessa sat down slowly. Okay, she said. Her tone changed. Softer. Strategic. Let's reset. We all made mistakes. There it was. The little bucket she used to spread blame evenly across a room. I did not pack my own suitcase, I said. She looked away. I did not lock myself out. Mark whispered, Vanessa. She turned on him. What? We were trying to solve a problem. I looked at her. And I was the problem. She did not answer. She did not need to. I stood. This notice does not remove you today. It gives you conditions. Mark looked up quickly. Conditions? Yes. You will return all keys to my private suite. You will not enter my rooms. You will not present me with transfer papers again. All property discussions go through Samuel. And you will apologize to me in front of the children. Vanessa's face hardened. No, Mark looked at her. Vanessa, no. I will not be humiliated in my own house. I let the sentence hang. Then I said softly, Your own house? No one spoke. That was the moment the reversal became complete. Not in court. Not with shouting. At a dining table, where she finally heard herself. I picked up my purse. I'll stay at a hotel tonight, I said. Not because you sent me away. Because I choose not to sleep under the same roof as people who still think I am theirs to move. Mark stood. Mom, please. I looked at him. You have 48 hours to decide whether you want to be my son or her accomplice. Then I walked out. This time with my purse, my keys, and the deed. The next 2 days were quiet. Not peaceful. Quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when people are reading documents they should have read years ago. Samuel called me the next morning. Mr. Wallace contacted me. And he no longer represents this matter. That almost made me smile. Almost. I spent those 2 days at a hotel downtown. Not Pinecrest. A better one. With clean sheets, hot coffee in the lobby, and no one telling me where I belonged. For the first time in years, I slept without listening for footsteps over my head. Without wondering if Vanessa was annoyed by my television. Without hearing Mark's garage door open and wondering if he would stop by or avoid me again. Distance has a sound. It sounds like breathing. On the second evening, Mark called. I answered. Mom. His voice was different. Lower. Less certain. Yes. I read everything. Good. A pause. I didn't know. I believed him. That was the tragedy. Mark did not know because Mark had not cared enough to know. He had accepted comfort without examining its source. He had enjoyed a house built on sacrifice and mistaken it for his own success. I should have known, he said. That mattered more. Yes, I replied. You should have. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Vanessa is angry. I assumed. She says you manipulated us. I looked out the hotel window at the streetlights below. No, Mark. I protected myself from being manipulated. He did not argue. That was new. She won't apologize, he said. I know. Then what happens? What do you think should happen? He exhaled shakily. I don't know. That was honest. Finally, you need to decide what kind of man lives in that house, I said. His voice cracked slightly. What if I already failed that test? I closed my eyes. A mother's heart is inconvenient. Even after betrayal, it still responds to pain. You failed Thanksgiving, I said. That does not mean you have to fail the rest of your life. He was silent. Then he whispered, I'm sorry I let her lock the door. That was the first real apology. Specific. No excuses. No if. No but. It reached me. Not enough to erase. Enough to hear. Thank you, I said. The next morning, Samuel sent a second notice. This one required a formal meeting. Property status. Occupancy terms. Conduct review. Family access boundaries. Mark agreed. Vanessa did not respond. So Samuel sent it again. Certified. There is something deeply satisfying about certified mail. It does not beg. It records. On the third day, I returned to the house with Samuel. Not alone. Mark opened the door. He looked tired. Older. Vanessa stood behind him. Arms crossed. Cold as marble. I stepped inside. The house felt familiar and strange. Samuel placed his briefcase on the dining table. The same dining table. Of course. Some rooms insist on witnessing everything. He opened the file. Let's begin, he said. Vanessa laughed once. Short. Sharp. This is ridiculous. Samuel looked at her calmly. Mrs. Bennett, what is ridiculous is attempting to pressure the legal owner of a property into signing transfer documents after locking her out of that property. Vanessa's face went white. No one had said it that plainly before. That was the power of law. It removed the decoration from cruelty and showed the frame. The meeting lasted almost 2 hours. Vanessa fought every sentence. Not loudly at first. She was too smart for that. She questioned definitions, challenged intent, suggested misunderstanding, claimed concern, mentioned my age 3 times. The third time, Samuel stopped writing and looked at her over his glasses. Mrs. Bennet, age does not transfer ownership. I liked him very much in that moment. Mark sat beside her, but not close. That space was new, small, visible, important. Samuel reviewed the trust, the house, the occupancy license, the conduct conditions. Then he presented the revised terms. Mark and Vanessa could remain in the house for 6 months under conditional occupancy. They would pay property expenses directly to the trust account. They would not attempt to transfer, refinance, sell, or encumber the property. They would not restrict my access to my suite. They would not remove my belongings. They would provide written acknowledgement of my ownership and trustee authority. And if any coercive conduct continued, termination proceedings would begin. Vanessa stared at the papers. This is eviction language. Samuel nodded. It is prevention language. Mark looked at me. 6 months. It can be extended, I said. His eyes lifted. If there is respect. Vanessa laughed again. There it is. She wants us to perform. I looked at her. No, I want you to stop performing. That silenced her. For a few seconds. Then she leaned forward. You're enjoying this. I thought about that. Really thought about it. Was I enjoying it? The answer mattered. No, I said. Her eyes narrowed. I'm not enjoying this. I am remembering myself. Mark looked down. Vanessa did not understand. I did not need her to. Samuel slid the acknowledgement page forward. Mark signed first. His hand hesitated before the pen touched paper. Then he signed. Vanessa stared at him. You're really doing this? He looked at her. It's her house. For words. Simple. Late. But true. Vanessa's face changed. It was not sadness. It was loss of control. There is a difference. She signed with anger. The pen pressed so hard it nearly tore the paper. Samuel gathered the documents. Good. Good. Again that word. Legal good. Not emotional good. After he left, I stayed. I needed to go upstairs. To my suite. The room above the garage had been mine for 2 years. Small sitting area. Bedroom. Bathroom. A shelf of Paul's books. Quilt from my sister. Photos of the grandchildren. When I opened the door, I stopped. Boxes. My things were in boxes. Not all. Enough. Books. Framed photos. Winter sweaters. A ceramic angel Tyler made in 2nd grade. Packed. Labeled. Ready. Vanessa had not waited for me to agree. She had already begun removing me. Mark came up behind me. He saw the boxes. His face collapsed. I didn't know, he whispered. This time, I was not sure I believed him. Vanessa appeared at the stairs. I was organizing. I picked up the ceramic angel. Its wing had chipped. Something inside me went still. Not broken. Still. I turned to Mark. This is why 6 months may be generous. Vanessa opened her mouth. I raised my hand. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough. No, the room froze. I looked at both of them. I will not be moved by people who live here by my permission. That sentence changed the air. And this time, Mark did not look away. I moved back into my suite that afternoon. Not because it was comfortable. Because leaving it empty would have made Vanessa's packing look successful. I unpacked every box she had touched. Slowly. Deliberately. The books went back on the shelf. The sweaters back in the drawer. The photographs back on the wall. The chipped ceramic angel went on the nightstand. Not hidden. Displayed. Evidence of both harm and love. Mark helped. Silently. Vanessa did not. She stayed downstairs. Cabinets opened and closed harder than necessary. Dishes clinked. Her anger moved through the house like weather. When we finished, Mark sat on the edge of the small sofa. He looked around the room. I forgot how much of you was up here, he said. I folded an empty box flat. No, you were willing not to see it. He nodded. No defense. That was new. Did Dad know this would happen? I sat across from him. Your father knew people become honest when money gets close. Mark covered his face. I hate that he was right. So do I. That was true. I would have preferred Paul to be wrong. I would have preferred my son to be better without legal consequences. I would have preferred Thanksgiving to be about gratitude instead of title documents. But preference does not change facts. The children came home from school around 4. Tyler was 15. Sophie was 11. They both looked scared. That made me angry in a way nothing else had. Adults can poison a house. Children breathe it first. Sophie ran to me. Grandma, are you leaving? I held her. No, sweetheart. Not today. Tyler stood near the doorway, trying to look older than he was. Mom said you were moving. I looked at Mark. He closed his eyes, then opened them. Grandma is not moving, he said. His voice was rough. This is her home, too. I watched him. Too. Not perfect, but better. I said nothing. Sophie looked relieved. Tyler looked confused. Children know when adults are editing. That night, I made soup in my kitchenette. Nothing fancy. Chicken broth. Rice. Carrots. The kind of food Paul used to ask for when the world felt too sharp. Mark knocked at 7. He stood outside the suite door holding my pie dish. Clean. I thought you might want this. I took it. The same dish I had been holding when he called me a burden. The circle was not closed yet, but I could see its shape. He looked at it too, then whispered. I said something unforgivable. I looked at him. Not unforgivable, but unforgettable. That distinction mattered. He nodded. Vanessa wants to leave. For the night. He shook his head. Maybe more. I felt no victory. That surprised me less this time. Revenge, when it is real, is not always sweet. Sometimes it is simply watching consequences arrive with tired eyes. What do you want? I asked. He looked toward the stairs, then back at me. I want my children to respect me again. Good. Not money. Not house. Respect. Then start by becoming someone they can respect, I said. He nodded. And for the first time in years, my son listened without trying to escape the sentence. Vanessa left 2 days later. Not permanently. Not officially. But enough to shake the house. She packed 3 suitcases, loaded them into her Lexus, and told Mark she needed space from the toxic environment. I said nothing. People often call a place toxic when it stops obeying them. The children watched from the upstairs window. That part hurt. No adult revenge should require children as witnesses. So after Vanessa drove away, I asked Mark to bring Tyler and Sophie to my suite. We sat around the small table. I made hot chocolate, real milk, whipped cream, a little cinnamon. Sophie stirred hers until the cream melted. Tyler stared at his mug. Finally, he said, is everyone getting divorced? Mark looked at me. I looked back at him. This was not mine to answer. He swallowed. I don't know, he said honestly. Tyler nodded. Honesty did not comfort him, but lies would have harmed him more. Sophie asked, is Grandma why Mom left? There it was. The question Lauren wanted planted. Mark's face tightened. No, he said. Then he looked at me. Grandma is not why Mom left. He turned back to the children. Adults made bad choices. I made some. Your mom made some. Grandma was hurt by those choices. Sophie's eyes filled. I heard Dad call you a burden. The room went silent. Mark looked like the words physically struck him. I reached for Sophie's hand. I know. You're not, she whispered. That nearly undid me. I smiled gently. Thank you. Tyler looked at his father. Why did you say it? Mark did not answer quickly. Good. Quick. Answers are often costumes. Finally, he said, because I was selfish and afraid, and I let someone else convince me that Grandma's needs were in the way of what I wanted. Tyler looked down. That answer was heavy, but true. Later, after the children went downstairs, Mark stayed. I called Samuel, he said. I waited. I want to set up a separate education account for the kids. One I contribute to. Not you. That mattered. Responsibility. Small but real. Good, I said. And I want to pay rent to the trust. I studied him. Can you? I'll figure it out. For the first time, those words did not sound like a request for rescue. They sounded like a man meeting reality. I nodded. We'll discuss it with Samuel. He smiled faintly. Of course. Boundaries had become the language of the house. It was not warm yet, but it was honest. Weeks passed. Vanessa stayed with her sister. Mark started therapy. The children came to my suite after school more often. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just watched old game shows and ate popcorn. The house became quieter, not empty, recovering. On a chilly Sunday morning, I found Mark in the kitchen making pancakes. Badly. Flour on the counter. Batter too thick. Smoke alarm nearly offended. I stood in the doorway. He looked up. Don't say it. I lifted both hands. I said nothing. He smiled. A real one. For a moment, I saw my boy again. Not fully. Not safely. But enough to remind me that endings are rarely clean. Sometimes emotional revenge is not destroying the person who hurt you. Sometimes it is forcing them to look in the mirror and letting them live with what they see. 1 year later, Thanksgiving came again. I almost canceled it. No one would have blamed me. At least, no one reasonable. But I did not want the memory of one terrible Thanksgiving to own every Thanksgiving after it. So I cooked. Not everything. I was learning. Mark made the turkey. Samuel's wife sent pecan pie. Tyler mashed the potatoes. Sophie made place cards with little painted leaves. Mine said Grandma Eleanor. Not burden. Not guest. Not problem. Grandma Eleanor. I placed it at the head of the table. Not because I needed power. Because I had earned peace. The house looked different that year. Some furniture had moved. Vanessa's decorative signs were gone. The give thanks wreath had never returned. I did not miss it. Vanessa did come. That surprised me. She and Mark were separated, not divorced. Trying, he said. Slowly. Carefully. She arrived with a casserole and an expression that did not know where to land. She looked thinner, less polished. Or maybe I had simply stopped mistaking polish for strength. At the door, she said, "Thank you for inviting me." I nodded. For the children. She accepted that. Good. At dinner, no one mentioned last year. Not directly. Some ghosts do not need names to be present. They sit quietly in the extra chair of memory. Before we ate, Mark stood. His hands were shaking. Not much. Enough. I want to say something, he said. The room stilled. He looked at me. Last Thanksgiving, I called my mother a burden. Sophie looked down. Tyler stared at his plate. Vanessa went very still. Mark continued. I said it in this room. In front of this family. And after that, I let her be pushed out of a home she had protected for all of us. His voice broke slightly. She was never the burden. She was the reason we still had a roof over our heads. I looked at my hands. My wedding ring. Paul's ring, now on a chain beneath my blouse. I'm sorry, Mom, Mark said. Publicly. Specifically. Without excuses. That was the apology. The one that closed the circle. Not perfectly. But honestly. I nodded. Thank you. Vanessa did not speak for a while. Then, quietly, she said, I'm sorry too. I looked at her. Her apology was smaller. Less certain. But I did not need to decide its full value that night. Some things can remain under review. We ate. The turkey was a little dry. The potatoes needed more butter. The pie was excellent. Nobody was locked out. That was enough. After dinner, I stepped onto the porch. The air was cold, like the year before. But this time I wore my coat. My keys were in my pocket. My phone was in my hand. And the door behind me was not locked. Mark came outside with 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one. We stood together in silence. Across the street, a family loaded leftovers into a car. The same ordinary life. Still moving. Still indifferent. Still beautiful. I used to think owning the house made me safe, I said. Mark looked at me. Didn't it? I shook my head. No. Remembering I owned myself did. He absorbed that. Slowly. The way he did now. Inside, Sophie laughed. Tyler groaned about dishes. Vanessa said something I couldn't hear. The house was not healed. Not completely. But it was no longer built on pretending. That mattered. Last Thanksgiving, my son called me a burden. He did not know I owned his house. But the real twist was not the deed. It was not the trust. It was not the legal notice or the signed acknowledgement. The real twist was this. I had spent years believing love meant making myself easy to keep. Quiet. Useful. Available. Forgiving. But love that requires you to disappear is not love. It is ownership. And I had confused the two for far too long. So I changed the locks. Called the lawyer. Protected the children. Held my son accountable. And kept my chair at the table. They thought I was a burden. But a burden is something you carry. I was the foundation. And when I finally stopped holding everything up in silence, they all felt the house shake.